the way men and women navigate. For example, if a woman gives you instructions, she'll say, go till you see the shoe store and take a left at the high stone wall. A man will say, go 2 miles down the road and then head east.
At home, Jonah is only 2, but 11-year-old Jordan and 9-year-old Jerica seem to be reading off different scripts as well.
When Jerica tells you a story and Jordan tells you a story, do they communicate differently?
Mm-hmm.
How so?
There's a lot more drama in Jerica's day. Everything is about relationships.
She's kind of really selfish. She wants everything for herself.
But I do know who was whose best friend today and who fought with who and what boy likes who, and Jordan has no interest in that kind of stuff at all.
What kind of party? I mean, is it a party in school?
Yeah.
And just with kids or adults too?
I don't know.
Women excel in verbal skills. Now, this is not to say that what women talk about is any more interesting or more important than what men talk about. But at finding the right word rapidly, women excel all through their lives.
Sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. Fact is, men and women are very different in the way they speak, behave, solve problems, even remember where the car keys are. The reasons why have fueled arguments for generations. Is it our biology or our culture? Well, many scientists say it's in our heads, or more precisely, the way a woman's brain is designed and works is so different from a man's. But until recently, it's been a sensitive subject among scientists. 100 years ago, the discovery that female brains were about 10% smaller was cited as proof that women could never be as smart as men, adding to their status as second-class citizens. Dr. Florence Hazeltine of the NIH is the founder of the Society for Women's Health Research.
The best thing about the last 10 years is now that we're looking at the differences between men and women, is we're finding explanations for ideas that were sitting in our brains all along.
We now know that size doesn't matter when it comes to brain power. Our IQs are the same. In fact, the highest recorded IQ belongs to a woman, writer Marilyn Vos-Savant. But there are other differences that distinguish men from women. Male brains are wired to move information quickly within each side or hemisphere. It gives them better spatial abilities. They can see an object in space and react quickly. In women's brains, areas of the cerebral cortex linked to language, judgment, and memory are more densely packed with nerve cells than men's brains. This allows them to process that information more effectively. And women's brains are also designed to better transfer information from one hemisphere to another.
This big highway between the two sides of the brain, called the corpus callosum, is larger in women towards the rear than it is in men. Hence, the two sides of the brain are better connected.
That means women can absorb and analyze all sorts of information from the environment simultaneously.
They've got a better sense of smell, taste, hearing. They see better in the dark. They notice a lot of the nuances of social behavior. And with their very well-connected brain, they connect these things.
It also makes them more adept at multitasking, while men seem to do better tackling one thing at a time.
I think it's very real in our case. Rich is very focused, and he needs to stay focused on that issue until completion, because he has a hard time getting right back to it. Whereas I'm out here and I'm cooking dinner and I'm on the phone and the kids are doing their homework and the baby's trying to eat a snack, and it all goes pretty smoothly.
Now scientists have a new way of looking inside the working brain to see the way our brains are wired. Functional MRIs measure blood flow, electrical activity, and energy use to give us a picture of our brains in action.
So we're first going to get some anatomic images.
Ruben and Raquel Gurr, a husband and wife neuroscience team at the University of Pennsylvania, put men and women inside an MRI and studied how their brains handled verbal and spatial tasks. In each case, the male brain lit up in just a few areas.
And they really become completely focused, working on the test in their mind's eye.
So they really shunt blood flow to where they need it most.
Exactly.
Women's brains look different, lighting up in many areas for both spatial and verbal tasks.
In women, they actually begin to look in other areas. You begin to see more activity in other brain regions.
The male brain's ability to focus on one area works better for spatial tests. The female brain's approach is better for verbal tests. Exactly why, scientists are still trying to figure out.
I'd love to show you a picture of the spine.
And these differences begin in the womb.
Oh, it's amazing.
At first, all fetuses' brains are virtually the same. Then, at about 9 weeks, testosterone surges through the male fetus, not only creating a boy's body, but actually hardwiring the brain to be male. Without testosterone to spur those changes, girls develop female brains. And before they can talk, you can see those brain differences on the playground.
You're just gonna fall here. It's not too far. You won't hurt yourself.
Matthew is much more adventuresome.
Go ahead. You're gonna swing?
And he's much more of the risk taker.
Whoa!
She played a little bit longer. She was able to concentrate a little more than he did on tasks, building blocks.
Marilyn and Todd Lazarus of New York City gave birth to their twins, Claire and Matthew, 2.5 years ago. And they insist they never treated their children differently.
Go ahead.
She just started to play at bathing the baby.
That's true.
And he wants to do what she's doing. But he really doesn't care. It's like about a second, and then, you know, he takes the head off the baby. You know, it's like very stereotypical.
It's important when we talk about brain and behavior to understand all behavior is brain related.
Dr. Michael Lewis, who heads the Child Development Institute at Robert Wood Johnson Medical Center, has documented behavioral differences in children as young as 1.
Ready?
We frustrate them by putting them over the barrier so the child can't get to the mother. And we look at what is the child's strategy to get back to the mother.
And Lewis has found it's different for boys and girls.
The boy child wants to get back to mom, and it's going to push on it, knock it down, climb over that barrier, try to go around the side. Little girl's strategy is get help from another person.
So who gets the job done? The girls, crying for help.
The child will get out the fastest by showing distress and getting the mom to take the child out.
Michael Lewis points out that these 1-year-olds will grow up in a world that reinforces boy-girl differences through cartoons, commercials, clothing. But how much do these social cues influence our behavior? That question has sparked a heated debate among scientists. It's a complicated culture we grow up in, according to Brown University biologist Anne Fausto Sterling.
I balk at the notion that our brains are hardwired. Our brains develop, and they develop new connections. So you never have development outside of culture and experience. The fact is that there's still heavily gendered messages that come across at all different levels, and it starts younger than we imagine.
But even with all those cultural messages, a simple accident of nature shows how powerful biology can be in shaping behavior. Betsy Driver was born with a condition called CAH, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. While still in her mother's womb, she was exposed to higher than usual levels of male hormones, the same hormones that hardwire male brains. She's biologically female, but she's convinced that surge of testosterone affected her brain.
I think many aspects of our personality are predetermined. I certainly didn't learn how to think like a boy and act like a boy. I just always was. I like trucks and being a roughhouse and playing with the boys.
CAH girls clearly have much more frequent rough and tumble play, much more frequent high activity, more the gross motor, like we would see in the typically developing male.
Dr. Lisa Freund has studied CAH at the National Institutes of Health.
Here, we're seeing some very, very strong indication of a biological effect above and beyond how the culture is influencing the child and above and beyond how the parent is influencing the child.
Further evidence at the Yerkes Field Station in Atlanta, where Dr. Kim Wallen is watching some children who don't watch Saturday cartoon shows. They're rhesus monkeys, one of our closest relatives.
If you look at the play behavior of little kids, little boys actually are playing quite differently than the little girls are. When we look at little groups of monkeys, we see exactly the same sort of thing. If they were males, they'd be grappling with each other, they'd be rolling on the ground, very active, vigorous play. The females, on the other hand, will spend a lot of time holding infants, and what you see is a much more vigorous social interactions than you see in males.
Back at the Bullwares, it seems culture is playing its part. But Jordan and Jerica have made some distinct choices. He goes for the action-packed 3D games, while she's into games involving language.
Very nice move, Jerica.
Perhaps nature and nurture are inseparable.
When people ask me how much of it is biology and how much of it is culture, I say it's 100% biology and 100% culture. They go absolutely hand in hand.
Coming up next.
The games will now begin.
Do you think like a man?
Stuff like that always makes sense to me.
Or a woman?
These were all visual words.
Play along with our group as we test their language, memory, spatial skills, and more. The Brain Game. What's sex got to do with it? With Dr. Nancy Snyderman.